So, given I'm here by myself today, I wanted to make this a special episode of Let's Get Fiscal. And it's a special episode in that I'm going to be laying it on the line and putting out a call to arms to all journalists, all economists, and anyone interested in politics in this country, including a petition which I will link to in the description of this video. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, then just go to YouTube and look up episode 15 of Let's Get Fiscal and you can find that link to the petition. I'm going to start off with a little story. A friend of mine was ill and no one really knew why. He had all these symptoms and it just seemed as though he was falling apart. And the symptoms didn't seem related. They just were like, this was going wrong, and he had headaches, and the vision was blurry, and then sometimes he was aching, and he was tired for no reason, and all of this stuff. And no one could figure it out. Eventually, they figured out that he had Parkinson's disease. Once they had figured out the underlying cause, it seemed to make so much more sense how all of these symptoms fit together. And of course it's a tragedy to be diagnosed with Parkinson's, but at least once they had that diagnosis, they knew how to treat it. I think that what's going on in the world, if you just say in the world today, is very similar. We have 1,000 problems and we look at them all and we say, what's going on? The world's falling apart. And people who have, older than me, they sort of say it's moral decay. And in the 50s, we had the gumption to make it happen. And we look around and kind of despair. And we say, look at all these different problems. How can we fix them all? And I used to think the same thing. I used to look at all these different problems. It doesn't matter what you care about. You can care about any cause. Let's go. I listed some, so I'm just going to go through a big list here of all the different causes that came to my mind. If you care about housing affordability, poverty, homelessness, the Indigenous health gap, Indigenous employment outcomes, domestic violence, caring for the disabled, caring for the aged, unemployment, energy and food security, sustainability, crime, innovation, economic growth, LGBTQI rights, gay rights, substance abuse, animal welfare, child protection, mental illness, immigration, terrorism, any of these things you could care about. Whatever is number one on that list for you, it has the same underlying cause. Just the same as my friend who had Parkinson's in the end. There is a disease underlying all of these issues. And once you diagnose the disease, all of a sudden they start to make sense. Not only that, but we know how to treat it. So I'm going to give you the disease now, and it's called sound finance. And what it is, it says that sound finance says that the government should run its budget process the same way that a business or a household does. For every dollar it spends, it has to tax $1 back. Or if it wishes to spend more than it's taxed, it has to borrow money, in air quotes, and then pay it back at some future time. Things like sustainability, energy and food security. What do they have to do with sound finance? Well, the government is in a unique position, and really it's the role of government, to transition industries from maybe an unsustainable industry to a more sustainable industry, maintaining GDP, maintaining employment, maintaining demand in the economy. And only the government can do that. Bill Mitchell calls it a just transition, meaning that we go from, for example, a polluting industry to a non-polluting industry without collapse, without a whole lot of people losing their jobs. Because as soon as people lose their jobs, as soon as we have those layoffs, the demand in the economy weakens and it starts a downward spiral. It really, once things collapse, it's very hard to get them going again. A bit like base loading in a power station. They need to keep a base load of power on so that they can cope with the demand. If they dip below that base load, it's very difficult to get the power station running again. So in the case of people, that breakdown occurs, manifests itself in things like breakup of families. It manifests itself in degradation of community, isolation, homelessness, mental illness, crime. It manifests itself in poverty, in homelessness. Those are all things caused by economic malaise. They are not moral decay. This is not a situation where everyone in the 50s was great and everyone starting from the mid-70s onwards started to get gradually worse. That's not true. People born today are the same people that were born back then. They're just born into a very different economic environment. Indigenous gaps in health and income and employment all are caused by systematic economic exclusion. And it is the role of government to provide the economic opportunity for people in situations of extreme disadvantage, especially where that disadvantage is directly a result of systematic economic exclusion by the government. It is more important than ever that we recognise that Indigenous gaps, all of the gaps, the life expectancy, health, economic, income, are all the result of sound finance, a sound finance approach to government spending. When you have a situation where people are fearful, where people are anxious, and where people are feeling stretched and feeling stressed and feeling like no one has their back, they are then more easily manipulated. They're more easily whipped up into a frenzy against an other. The level of compassion decreases in a society that is put under that kind of pressure, and the level of brutality increases. That is a direct result of pressure placed on the public by government austerity. Until we make people feel comfortable, until we reduce the amount of threat that people feel in their everyday lives and reduce that anxiety, we are not going to increase the level of compassion enough that the majority, the mainstream, starts to be more tolerant of people who are not mainstream, and starts to be more tolerant of needs that are not their own. Because until people's needs are met, they don't feel comfortable trying to meet the needs of others. So concerns about people that they see as other to themselves are more difficult to get on the political radar when everyone is so concerned about their own bottom line, when everyone's so concerned about whether they can afford to pay the rent this week. So sound finance is sucking the money out of society, and it is sucking the compassion out of society. So what's the cure? How do we treat this economic malaise brought about by sound finance? The answer is a thing called functional finance. And functional finance is the cornerstone of the economic management, macroeconomic management theory, which we have taken as the policy framework, the economic policy framework for the Australian Employment Party. That's called modern monetary theory. But functional finance came before modern monetary theory was a thing. And it basically says that the way government should spend is not dollar in, dollar out. I taxed $1, therefore I can spend $1. Really, the goal should be to maintain full employment. That's the starting point if we maintain full employment. That's a different way of thinking about how the government spends. And it's very difficult for people to get their head around because we spent so long listening to the government tell us that it's a household, that it's a business. If I ran my business like that, I'd go out of business really quickly. We've got to live within our means. But there's no real reason why we can't set it up differently. Now, when I actually called someone up from the Parliamentary Budget Office the other day, and I said, why can't the government just issue reserves instead of having to issue these bonds? And he said, oh, well, that would be inflationary. If the government issues reserves without issuing bonds in the same amount, then inflation will occur, and that's hyperinflation, that's Zimbabwe. Rather than go into the details, like the real nitty-gritty of it, what I'm going to do is give you an analogy. Imagine we are in a car, we're driving down the highway, and we are going 40 kilometers an hour. But we're doing it in first gear, and the revs are going up, they're redlining, right? And so the driver says, hey, you know what? We're redlining. We can't go any faster. And you say, oh, right, but you could change gears and then we could go faster than 40 kilometers an hour because we wouldn't be redlining anymore. And the driver says, are you kidding me? Go faster than 40 kilometers an hour. Haven't you heard about that car that crashed going faster than 40 kilometers an hour? That's crazy. We would never want to change gears. Never mind the fact that the car that crashed was going 180. Now, I'm not saying let's go 180. I'm saying maybe we could go 80. And it would still be safe, but we would get there in half the time. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. Sound finance is like the car sitting in first, redlining, saying we can't go faster than 40. I know that we could change gears if we wanted to, but there was a car once that crashed. It was going faster than 40, so we don't want to go over 40. Now, maybe we could go 80. Maybe we could go 100. But no one's letting us ask that question. We're not debating the issues in the correct terms to be able to say how fast we can go. How big should our deficit be? What is the spending gap? How can we... what should the government invest in? What infrastructure should we be building? What research and development initiatives should the government be directly funding? Not giving grants, directly funding through institutions like the CSIRO. Should we be investing in research and development on local food production? Should we be investing in how to farm without torturing animals? Should we be investing in federally funded, locally administered job guarantees that leave no one involuntarily unemployed, no matter what the private sector is doing? But we're not having the discussions in that context. We're having discussions in the context of a just blind belief that if we go over 40, we will crash because we heard about a car that crashed going faster than 40 one time. So I'm going to leave you with that. That was a bit of a monologue, a bit of a diatribe, a bit of a rant. I'm going to start a petition, and the petition is going to be to change from sound finance to functional finance. I want to call on all journalists, all economists, anyone who is politically aware or politically interested in this country, not just to sign up for the Australian Employment Party, but to take this message out wherever you go and tell people that there is a different way, a much better way that we can set up our society to achieve what we want to achieve. No matter what your number one concern is, it has its roots in the government running the economy according to sound finance. The petition is going to be signed hopefully by economists, hopefully by politically interested people. I'm going to then try and distribute it to journalists, get some coverage about this. Because until we stop groveling to the private sector for jobs, until we stop throwing ourselves at the altar of finance and our universal belief that the private sector is the only way that we can save ourselves, and take responsibility for telling our governments how we want our society to operate, we will continue with the same economic malaise and the same problems that we're seeing over and over and over again. Just like my friend who couldn't figure out what was wrong, we are all looking around us all the time trying to figure out what's going on in the world. What is wrong with us? Why is everything so bad? Why is everyone so stressed? I thought technology was supposed to make our lives easier, but we're all working harder. Until we recognize the root cause underlying all of these things, we will continue to see thousands of problems that cannot be solved and feel daunted at trying to solve them all, rather than boiling it down to one root, very solvable issue, which is that we can change the way we set up our economy to work for us and not against us. Until next week, I'm Ian Dooley. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
You call me daydreamer, I call me danger schemer. You said I'm love claimer, I said I'll never be the same again. Easy comes, easy does. Easy come as easy does. And I say, daydreams change the world. I just want to touch your face, not carve you in the rock of ages. You asked me, was I an angel? Forgot to say, whatever changed your mind. Easy come as easy does. Easy come as easy does. And I was thinking, angels save the world. Change my sorrows into birds, to fly above a night of words. Words as smooth as flames. Words as deep as pain. To eat your cake, you gotta have it, but still you kissed me in the traffic. And I was thinking, when will I go? I was thinking, what do you know? Easy come as easy does. Easy come as easy does. And I was thinking, what can change the world? I was thinking, what can save the world? Daydreams or angels,